Dylan Raiola is officially an Oregon Duck. The news just won't stop.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for a live reaction episode of Locked On Ducks, because why the heck not? I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin, never leaving my apartment for the next, 72 hours, 2 weeks. That's what it feels like. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, the number one sports podcast network out there. Thank you all so much, especially my everydayers, for helping make that the case. Oregon got Michael Bennett, offensive tackle transfer from Yale. I'll have some thoughts on that and a couple of mailbag items as well. This episode brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Well, good morning, everybody. I can hear myself still trying to get the morningness out of my voice. I'm sure it'll get there by the 7-minute mark or so on this show. But you better get all your questions or concerns expressed about Dylan Raiola now, because he's an Oregon Duck. There is going to be a day, whether it's 2026 or what I hope, 2027, Dylan Raiola is going to start football games for Oregon. That's going to happen. It's just a matter of when, not likely a matter of if. So the way that this all went down is pretty crazy. To have Moga and Novosad transfer out and to have Raiola transfer in. When you lose your offensive coordinator, who's also your quarterback's coach, I'm very curious to see if Oregon hires someone to be a quarterback's coach, because that was Will Stein's job for the last several years, and Maringer is, of course, the former tight ends coach. Maybe he'll shift over and be. That stuff is a lot of just handing titles around, but the point that is worth making is that Oregon has room on the offensive staff to bring in another voice. And when you lose somebody who recruited both of those guys, Austin Novosad and Luke Moga, this is the option that you're left with. Because I know plenty of folks get frustrated with, why you're recruiting high school quarterbacks. And the answer is you want to give yourselves as many options as humanly possible. You can't predict how anything's going to go. When Will Stein was at Oregon and the Ducks staff, which certainly involved more than Coach Stein, recruited Austin Novosad, they didn't even know at the time that Dante Moore would be a Duck one day. You have to be prepared for every scenario. But end of the day, I've consistently had this take with the transfer quarterbacks Oregon has brought in. My number one concern is what is the best possible option to put the best product on the field to give Oregon the best chance to win. That is all legitimately I care about. If that's someone who is a high school quarterback recruit, great. If it's a reclamation project, great. If it's an immediate impact guy who's got a high floor, Dylan Gabriel, great. Whatever is going to give Oregon the best chance to win. Now, we're still waiting on Dante Moore. And based on how these live reaction shows I've been doing have gone, Dante Moore is probably going to make his NFL decision within the next 4 minutes of me doing this show. That's just the way that this is. That's the way that this has gone. And I would still very much like for Dante Moore to come back. Oregon now, however, has arguably the best backup quarterback situation in all of college football. It's a non-zero thing. Going into this year, I felt like Oregon had their best backup quarterback situation that they've had in several years. And it's directly comparable to an insurance policy. You don't think about it. You just pay your premiums. You don't really care about it that much. And then all of a sudden it is the most important thing in your life when you really need it. Well, if Dylan Raiola has to start because Dante Moore gets dinged up, you're in a pretty good situation there. Now, the question for him coming off of an injury this year is whether he'll be ready for spring ball, to get acclimated to being in Oregon, to build some chemistry with wide receivers, to talk with Drew Maringer, Oregon's offensive coordinator. Of course, I don't think that contract has been finalized publicly yet. Definitely waiting to see if that and Hampton's deal gets announced this week, but I expect that to continue to be the case, of course. But I think this is just Oregon being adaptive to whatever scenario is put in front of them. And one of those scenarios is, well, you had two guys transfer out. Maybe they encouraged them to transfer, or maybe those guys wanted to go elsewhere because Oregon's the place they wanted to play under Will Stein. Will Stein's now the head coach of Kentucky. So when you lose two coordinators in a cycle, I know that there have been, like, some folks have sent me messages about, well, Lanning had to have seen this happen at Alabama, and they lost coordinators all the time, and they didn't have to deal with the transfer portal back then. You don't know. Look at the guys Alabama's losing right now. They just had a former 5-star edge commit to Notre Dame in the transfer portal. I mentioned Ty Simpson on my show from earlier today, that schools are trying to keep him from going into the NFL draft to convince him to go in the portal, a la Carson Beck, or I think some schools try that with Cam Ward maybe. And there was one, what was the other one? Oh, Quinn Ewers. Quinn Ewers was the other one there. So, yeah, I think the move makes plenty of sense. Now, interestingly enough, if you look at PFF grades, and I do, Raiola actually wasn't very good this year. And I bet that would line up with the Nebraska Cornhuskers comments crowd that you could probably find on YouTube in reacting to all of this news. And PFF's grades are actually usually higher for quarterbacks than they are for any other position group. That's just kind of the way that it's gone. And Dante Moore graded very well this year. We know how much work he still had to do. So Raiola's stats and his PFF grade do not line up at all. His PFF grade is actually pretty bad. 61.9. Not good. His numbers, however, were indeed quite good as he won games at Nebraska. And I'll have plenty more on him this week. I'll reach out to our Locked On Nebraska guy and see if we can, get the full rundown on kind of how he was received for the season and 3/4 that he played in Nebraska before he got hurt. But he was the guy as a true freshman that led Nebraska to a bowl game victory, a 7-6 year. I know that doesn't sound like a bunch. It's not exactly a Curt Cignetti at Indiana type revival. Nebraska has been a losing program for a long time. The last time they reached a bowl game before Matt Rule's second year and Raiola's first was Mike Riley being the head coach in 2016. That was the last time they reached a bowl game. So no, Matt Rule's not as good as Curt Cignetti, but he's moved them in the right direction. And part of the reason he did that was Dylan Raiola. Now, at Nebraska, kind of similar to Bo Nix, he had the pressure and expectation of being a 5-star recruit. There were some ties to the program, and he was expected to be the savior. Well, he's not expected to be the savior of Oregon football. He's just going to be expected to be a good football player. And by the way, he's been a good football player. Not a perfect one. He still has room to grow. From year 1 to year 2, though, he progressed significantly. Year 1 in 13 games, 67%, over 2,800 yards, 13 touchdowns, 11 picks. Yeah, that's life as a true freshman. Year 2, through 9 games, which was really 8.5, 2,000 yards. He was throwing for about 6 more yards per game on average. He's never been a super high volume passer because that's just not what they did at Nebraska. They wanted to have a balanced offense, kind of like Oregon, frankly. He had 2,000 yards. He completed 72.4% of his passes, 18 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. That is sizable growth. And yet PFF, for whatever reason, and I'll continue diving into this on the show, feels like he still has a lot of room to grow. He's 6'3", 230 pounds. He's a big kid. Big kid back there. Was a number 3 quarterback in the 24/7 composite in the class of 2024, and the number 21 overall player in the country. Dude has got immense potential. And I think the number one holdup that some Oregon fans have is that he really wants to be Patrick Mahomes. And because we have social media and cameras everywhere, there are cameras showing him trying to imitate Mahomes in all these little different ways. Yet there are worse guys to try and imitate than maybe the best quarterback in the history of the NFL, other than Tom Brady. So it could be a lot worse. And for continuity purposes, with the roster that Oregon is shaping up to have next year, even though I like Raiola and I'm totally good with this move, I still want Dante Moore to come back. I mean, look at what Dante Moore was his freshman year at UCLA compared to this year when he started after waiting a season. Marcus Mariota redshirted his first year at Oregon. Raiola this year, again, 72%, 222 yards a game, 18-6 touchdown to interception ratio in 9 games. What could he turn into with the weapons he'll have come 2027 as Oregon's starting quarterback? Could be pretty darn special. Pretty darn special. So, keep leaving your thoughts in the comments below. Raiola is not the only transfer that Oregon added. Are they done on the offensive line? Well, that depends. First, this episode is brought to you by our friends at Wayfair. The new year is here, and it's the perfect time to reset your routine and refresh your space. If you're spending more time at home, you might as well love how it looks and feels. That's why you should turn to Wayfair. It's a one-stop shop for getting your home back on track. From bedding and mattresses to storage solutions for every room, Wayfair makes it easy to start the year fresh. Wayfair has everything you need for a full home refresh, all in one place, whether you're updating your living room, organizing your space, or upgrading your work-from-home setup. Got to have the good work from home setup. That is essential. Wayfair's huge selection makes it easy to find exactly what works for your style and budget. So you can pick up new bedding. You can find any style. It can fit into whatever kind of budget you're trying to make happen. It is going to make getting back into a routine in the new year feel a lot more manageable. Wayfair is the place to go. Get organized, refreshed, and back on track this year for way less. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop all things home. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair.com. Wayfair. Every style, every home. Every time I drink from a coffee mug, I feel like I'm doing the Kermit the Frog meme. You know, the sipping tea to be passive-aggressive towards others. Not that I'm trying to be passive-aggressive towards anybody at the moment, but here we are. So, Oregon beefed up its offensive line and went the, should we call it the Johnny Cornelius route of sorts, and added Michael Bennett, offensive tackle from Yale, class of 2022 recruit originally, and has got good size, 6'5", 310 pounds, native of Atlanta, Georgia, went to Holy Innocents Episcopal School. I shout that out only because I went to Oregon Episcopal School until I was 10 years old. So, did not have any star rankings at all coming out of high school. Goes to Yale. He's played 3 seasons for the Bulldogs. PFF has him coming off his best season as a football player. 74.5 overall grade, 839 snaps on the line for the Bulldogs, who I believe were a good team this year, and had a pass blocking grade of 67.9 and a run blocking grade of 73.4. So what I think about with this transfer is I trust Malik Terry. He's hit a lot of home runs in the portal. Back-to-back years, a Joe Moore Award finalist along the offensive line. And if he thinks this guy's good, I'm inclined to trust him because he's had a pretty high hit rate with those guys. The question about the offensive line is, are they going to add more? Because I always knew, and I mentioned on the show, that offensive line transfers were going to be needed. So having Poncho back, I don't think that we can overstate how important that is. I mean, it is not just because you're bringing your center back who's making all the calls, and he's such a good offensive lineman, was a finalist for the Remington Award this year, and I suspect he will be again next year. But to not need to go out and find a center, it's pretty awesome stuff. So having Poncho back is great. Oregon, elsewhere on the offensive line, was always going to need 2 new tackles because Isaiah World and Alex Harkey are out of eligibility. Now, we saw a handful of guys over the course of this season step in and play tackle at various points, whether that was Janoris Wilson or Fox Crater. Those were the most snap guys. Kavika Rogers might have logged a couple snaps there, but those are the guys that we saw most prominently. And I'm a Fox Crater fan, by the way. He logged 138 snaps this year. He had a pass blocking grade of 88. Needs some work in the run blocking department. Janoris Wilson, funny enough, is kind of the opposite of that from what we've seen so far. Janoris can really move guys out of the way on the ground. Little slow, and his technique needs a little bit work in the pass protection space. But I think Oregon could absolutely build an elite offensive line and be done. They might also go out and add another. Now, this could very well depend on one of the most prized recruits of Oregon's 2026 class, Emmanuel Ihanicho, who I'm sure plenty of you have seen the clips that go around on social media. He was at one of those, camps like Under Armour All-American or something like that. And he was going up against Zion Ely and wins some reps there and was getting all sorts of plaudits and praise. And, Brian was there and texted me a video of him and said, man, the guy's huge. And that he was just really impressive across the board. He can play guard or tackle. I think bringing in Michael Bennett indicates one of two things. Number one, they don't expect Ihanicho to be ready to come in and start at tackle. Number two, also possible, they're going to try and move him to play guard. Because I think right now you could have a good group of tackles with just Michael Bennett, Janoris Wilson, Fox Crater. Rotate those guys. Maybe Wilson stays in the same role. He's the sixth offensive lineman, can step in and spot start. Bennett's at right tackle, and Fox Crater is at left. I know Jeff Schwartz, who does a bunch of great film breakdowns, is pretty bullish on Fox Crater's prospect as well. And Crater will be going into, I believe, his third, or would it be his fourth year of college football? I'm going to double check that real quick. Because he was a guy I was stoked that Oregon got coming out of high school because there were some other big-time schools. Yeah, he's class 2024, was a redshirt freshman, so he's going into his third year of college football. And, Lanning has said this in the past, going both directions in the trenches. It's pretty hard to come in and play, especially start, in your first year, and that's not unique to Oregon. Even highly rated recruits, like Ihanicho, by the way, they don't often play a huge role in their first season. Josh Connerly was an extra offensive lineman that Oregon used in that jumbo package. And maybe Ihanicho is that kind of guy. Great. That's a real role that's got to be filled. Side note, Zach Grace transferred. Curious to see what Oregon does at the fullback position. Because in that package this year, Zach Grace was prominently featured. So maybe they just put Tatum Tuioti there and have him line up. We saw him catch the fake punt against Texas Tech, so he could clearly run a route if needed, and obviously he's really good and physical. But anyway, bringing this back to the offensive line, I could see Oregon going out and adding another guard. I could see Oregon staying put with what they've got. Because I know Dave Iuli's back. I know Poncho's back, okay? Those are Sharpies. With how good the O-line was this year, They both have areas, as most guys do, where they can improve a little bit. But those two guys, Sharpies. Now you've got three tackles that have at least got real-world action or starting experience. I wouldn't think you need to go out and get another tackle. But at guard, you're losing Emmanuel Prenon, who was, depending on what you looked at, which service, third or fourth team All-American. And I contended all year and still believe he was Oregon's best offensive lineman. And Oregon had a finalist for the best center in all of college football. So if you're looking at that position, do you feel like a true freshman's going to be ready? Or would you rather have a true freshman like Ihanicho be, hey, in case we need him? Because the trench play, I don't care how big you are. I don't care how strong you are, how good you are. When you take that jump up, the jump from high school to college, I'd argue, is bigger than the jump from college football to the NFL, which is sizable. But I have seen recruits just as good, just as physically ready to go, just as highly rated as Ihanicho, get to college football, and then they struggle their first year. Why? Because the other guys are big, strong, and really good. You're going up against Amari Washington types from time to time. That'd be great for Ihanicho in practice, by the way, if he does play guard. Here's Bear Alexander and Amari Washington, one of the best interior tackle tandems in all of college football. That's quite the training ground for any offensive lineman. So I just rarely have that expectation. Does Oregon have other options that they could put at guard? yeah, Trent Ferguson's a guy that we've seen play, has, when he was coming out of high school, is definitely seen as more of a developmental project of sorts. But I think on the interior, Oregon just doesn't quite have the depth. Kavika Rogers was somebody that played guard. I think he saw action in the second half of the Peach Bowl this year and has been, a depth piece that has done a good job when called upon over the last couple seasons, and still has one more year of eligibility. So I think that they could certainly feel, Prenon was PFF's second highest rated guard in all of college football. They could certainly feel like Rodgers is ready for a bigger role. I think he's solid. PFF grade, yeah, he's pretty solid. But, the number of bodies that Oregon has in the room, their most snap guards this year, Prenon and Aiuli, obviously, were over 900 each, which is a ton. They didn't rotate them as often as they rotated the tackles. Lipe Mawala logged 10 snaps this year. He's in the portal. Matthew Bedford is out of eligibility. He had 82 snaps. Kavika Rogers, third most snap guard at 108. Dimitri Manning and Douglas Utu both logged snaps at guard 8 and 10 respectively. Are they ready? I mean, they've got the size to be ready. The question is, do they have the weight room work and technique to fully be ready to go? So I don't think Oregon, maybe they feel that, they'd rather have Fox Crater and Janoris Wilson as backups and have them be rotation guys, which certainly could make sense. If you can find elite tackle prospects, sure, go for it. I think more than likely Oregon is 60% to add a transfer guard somewhere. So I'll put that as a 6 on the SSA. I think the SSA, they add another tackle. I'm honestly sitting at a 3. I think they're set at tackle, and you just got to put the work in the offseason, get the guys ready to go. But Wilson and Crater have been in the system for a couple of years. They've been in the weight room for a couple of years. At least one should be ready to start. And you bring in Bennett to either give them competition, give them depth, or because you feel like he's going to be in a Johnny Cornelius type and start right away, going from the FCS up to the Big Ten. Obviously, Johnny was great. And if he's as good as a Johnny Cornelius was, sign me up. I'm totally here for it. So, gosh, so much happening. This is just a fire hose of news. A take on all of these transfers that I wanted to ignore, but I couldn't entirely. First, this episode brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. There's nothing like college football season, which unfortunately is over for Oregon. Tailgates, packed stadiums, being right there in the middle of it all. I can't wait. September 5th, Boise State season opener. Stoked, absolutely stoked for all of that, because the energy, the bands, the moments you remember forever. Going to that JMU game was so much fun. So much fun. Love seeing many of you out there. But actually getting tickets to an Oregon game or another college football game, well, that part used to be frustrating with long queues, logins, prices jumping at checkout. That is why Game Time gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to unlock amazing college football tickets and experiences in just a few taps. I have used Game Time to go to Oregon football games, to go to Oregon basketball games, to go to comedy shows, and the experience has been great. I save money every time. I've got a great process that they have to get the ticket onto your phone. It's really simple. I know what to expect from a pricing and a view standpoint. Game Time just gives you everything that you want, which is why you should check them out. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Look at that, a third segment sip. Seldom seen, but kind of necessary because it's early in the morning. So, a couple questions here to wrap up today's show. NSSA, Sunday, the number, it's changed since then. Sunday, the number of Duck football players that have entered the transfer portal reached 23. Less than 48 hours before that, the Ducks played a very disappointing game. Most, if not all, of those players knew Friday night they'd be entering the portal. This heavily impacted the performance of the team, either through distraction or lack of a long-term commitment to the program. I mean, some of these guys saw action. Plenty of them did not, at least not in a major way. I get where you're coming from here, and I've kind of gone back and forth on this because at first I thought, no, I don't think so. And then I thought, well, I don't know. Did it contribute to the vibe just kind of being off? Depends on how much sharing of portal plans there was amongst the players. Because obviously, these guys going in the portal, they didn't make that decision on Saturday morning. They've had an idea for a while. And guys are going to find landing spots. And I've got news for you. Coaches and teams and players are not supposed to reach out to players on other teams and, tampering and whatnot. While the season is still ongoing, it happens a lot. And I can almost guarantee you it happened with some of these Oregon players, that they were talked to by a coach, whether that's one of Oregon's 2 departing coordinators or a coach from another team that they're going to, I don't think it had as much of an impact as you're thinking, because I don't know that that's something you'd go into the locker room and vocalize, I do really think, as I talked about going up to the game, is the reason why I picked Oregon to lose the matchup. I thought that both coordinators having to split their time elsewhere, and if you watched any of the interviews with them, especially Stein, man, they looked exhausted. How could you not be? And at some level, it's their fault because they decided to take those jobs. It's really the fault of the makers of college football, and that the calendar is just so ridiculously broken and stupid that this is the situation you put yourselves in. It just doesn't make any sense, and I hope they fix it. I'm not optimistic that they will because it's gone on this long, and people have pointed out many times, not just myself, that, hey, this is not right. This is not a good thing for the sport, and, well, we still got it. So, yeah, some guys definitely knew going into that game, but the most important players, Dante Moore, who was probably the Oregon Duck that performed the worst on Friday night, singularly, and it cost the team dearly. I don't know that he's made up his mind. Maybe he has and he's just not saying, but we'll see how this move impacts it. So anyway, back to your SSA. A lot of the guys are depth pieces that were not playing a crucial role, and the guys that were there were, are largely coming back so far, or were definitely dead set on bringing Oregon's first national championship. And yeah, I'm gonna put this at a 2. If it were more coordinators driven, might be, as an SSA, I might give it a higher number, but no, that one's a 2. So end with some optimism here. Bud sends this one in. Having been an Oregon Ducks fan since the early 1960s, I'm as big a fan as ever and will not be discouraged by another disappointing playoff loss. I'm excited about the future of Oregon football. Outside of Indiana, is there another fan base that should be more optimistic than the Ducks? More optimistic? I mean, Ohio State's going to be there every year. I think Georgia's going to be there every year. Miami, if they can get a quarterback, will be very sustainable. Ole Miss, taking kind of a gamble at quarterback. They're getting former 5-star Deuce Knight from Auburn, and obviously they've got the coaching turnover there. Is there another fit? Yeah, I mean, level of optimism. Is there another fan base that should be more optimistic? I was bummed by the loss, don't get me wrong. Like, it wasn't so much that they lost the game, because obviously I expected them to, given the circumstances. It's the way in which they lost that was disappointing, that you just never actually made it a game. It was close for a quarter, and then the second quarter happened, and it was just an abject disaster. So that part was disappointing. Do I believe Dan Lanning can get Oregon over the hump? 100%. How many other coaches or how many other fan bases feel that way about their head coach? Several. Not all of them, though. So how many should be more optimistic? I don't know that there are that many. I like where Oregon's at. I really do. If Dante Moore comes back, the excitement level will be rather palpable. So that's what we're waiting for right now. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.